welcome into the first ever Burnout. He is the SEC Network's Peter Burns. I am Ryan Brown. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us. Burnsy, what is up today? How are you?
I'm doing good. By the way, this is already my new favorite show because I don't have to shave
That's right.
and look all nice for it. So I do appreciate that. And no, I was actually pumped because I was trying to figure out how the hell many teams are in each conference now, or like right before we went on air. You know, Telly broke the news a little bit earlier today of talking about the ACC likely to add teams, and I'm like, I legitimately don't know how many teams are in each conference now. No clue.
So, especially the numbered conferences, like the Big Ten hasn't been 10 in a very long time. I do laugh when I remember. Do you remember when the Big Ten was it Penn State they added when they put the one inside the zero because there were 11 teams?
Remember Leaders and Legends?
Like I do remember Leaders and Legends.
Nobody had any idea which one was Leaders, which one was Legends, and another. I don't know if that was. I think that predated Kevin Warren back there, and if for no other reason, whatever he does, he'll be looked at in like a weird way. But like Kevin Warren, if he got the Big Ten television deal done and got rid of Leaders and Legends, it probably was a pretty damn successful run there as a commissioner. Right?
Yeah, I mean. I at least though in that conference, I can tell you who was in each division. Like I still, after all these years, cannot do Atlantic and Coastal in the ACC. I got no idea.
No, okay, so I just put it over on Twitter. Are we calling it Twitter? We're still going to
the X.
Twitter,
you put it on X.
The X. I put it on X. You can follow me on X, which is just weird. All right, I'm going to give you a quick quiz right now.
Okay,
starting in 24, and you only get like 5 seconds for each one of these. How many teams will be in the SEC?
16.
Got it. How many teams will be in the ACC now?
18.
Close. 17 and a half. Remember, Notre Dame only counts as a half
because
they're too chicken to join the ACC. Big Ten will have how many teams?
16.
Big 12 will have how many teams?
14.
16. And the Pac-12 will have?
0.
2 right now. 2 right now.
Yeah.
How hilarious would that be if they found something, Brownie, in the contract that just says we don't technically have to have that many. Like we're a Power 5 conference.
Right.
It's still in the bylaws here. We're going like Washington State and Oregon State through like some like creative lawyering. All of a sudden split the $275 million a year or whatever that the Pac-12 was getting. And even all like the television dollars from the NCAA tournament. And it just becomes a financial windfall for them. It'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah, put us in the playoffs. We got 2 times. It doesn't matter. We're in the playoffs. We've got the contract. They go, says it right here in the contract. Says it right here in the contract. You can read it for yourself. We're in the playoffs. That would be pretty funny. You're right.
I feel bad. Like I mean, it's weird. And all of this stuff is happening right now because the college football playoff committee is meeting here. As we talk on Monday, are going to meet on Wednesday. So it's like they hear the music going right now, and now I guess we're waiting to just like everybody's trying to get the chair so they're not screwed out of it. And the Pac-12 ultimately ends up being, and really not just the Pac-12, but Oregon State and Washington State end up being the teams that don't have a chair when the music stops. It's crazy.
Like all of our coverage here, this is presented, the Burnout, by MyBookie.ag. Code next round at MyBookie.ag. Don't forget, football season is back. Winning season is here for you with MyBookie.ag, whether it's the college games kicking off this weekend or the NFL in a couple of weeks. They've got this brand new cash-out system that gives you great options all season long. So if you want to play a parlay, you hit those first 2 legs, you're like, I'm a little bit nervous about leg 3. They got a cash-out option on those first 2 legs, the parlay there. You can use those funds on another bet. You can let it ride for a bigger payday, however you want to do it right there. The early cash out tools help you stay in control there at mybookie.ag. Code next round when you sign up at mybookie.ag for that welcome bonus. Code next round gets you a welcome bonus at mybookie.ag. You see, Burns is very on brand for us with that rowback too.
Let's go.
TNR20 at checkout saves you 20% on your first order there. With rowback.com. We love this stuff. We wear it all the time up here, Burnsy.
I did not know that you guys were rowback team. So there you go. Like that was literally like a natural thing. So now I understand that. By the way, on the cash out deal, you think Vandy fans would have taken that when they were up 35-14 against Hawaii? They would have been like, "Oh, we're good. Like let's get out now."
I think so. We've already sat through a rain delay. Our stadium is half put together. Let's just head home. Let's head home. We'll talk about the SEC games every week on the Burnout with Peter Burns, and we'll start with that game. I mean, all right, so here's the thing. I'm watching that game and I'm like, Vandy, and I even tweeted this, Burns. I'm like, Vandy looks more athletic on offense than I remember them being. They look a little more athletic. And then I go back and look at the end of the game. I knew they couldn't run it. I didn't know it was that bad. They had like 40 rush yards.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go with this team. They destroyed that Hawaii team. Maybe Timmy Chang had some magic of the offseason. I don't know. I don't know where I am with Vandy right now, but I do know this. I am a little bit worried about them only winning 35-28 at home over Hawaii.
Yeah, good. We talked about this with Doring this morning on Sirius XM, right, on our show. It was like, how do you take this? I mean, a win's a win, right? You're going to take it. However, I think if you go back and remember there was all this type of chaos and all this BS that was going around Hawaii the year prior, like that Timmy Chang took over. So,
right.
like, this was a team that, like, it was kind of like just chaos brewing. So they had a bunch of people transfer out. The recruiting classes had just absolutely gone nowhere. And so it almost reminds me of like the last year with Derek Mason, or like even the first year with Clark Lee, where they just weren't very good whatsoever. And so now I look at it as like, I think Hawaii got a little bit better, but I don't know what you would rather. Like, in hindsight, of course, you want to have an ass kicking like 63-10, right? Like that was last year. All of a sudden, we all sat up. We're like, oh, Doris might have a little something. Remember, Mike Wright was awesome. They were 350 yards. We're like, okay, this guy could be a problem. But then now I feel like I no longer have this like little like, oh, I'm adopting little Vanderbilt, and like, oh, I'm so happy for you. Like, I legitimately want them to be good this year. And I think it's almost better for a team, Brownie. Call me an idiot here. But I think it's almost better for Clark Lee's squad to win that way, where it's like a teachable win, as opposed to, hey, we kicked somebody's ass. Everybody looks good. We're fired up. Like, I think they needed that win last year to kind of prove to themselves, like, hey, we got a little something. Like, this year is like, no, we won the game, but there's a lot of bad film out there. So tell me where we're bad at right now. I think it's more important for them to understand where they're bad at rather than winning by 50 points.
So I've seen it for years, Burns, and you've seen this too, living here in Alabama and watching, observing Nick Saban. Just about the happiest you'll find Nick Saban in season is when his team wins a game in a fashion that seems like a sloppy win or a bad win, because you've got to win. You don't pay the ultimate price. But he knows he's got his team's attention. He knows they're smart enough to know they did not play their best football. And he's got a ton of film that is going to show them just how bad they were and still won the game. And I mean, like, when Alabama
that's what happened yesterday. I mean, that's what happened against Hawaii, right? I mean, it's just like, we won, but you're like, oh man, coach is not going to be happy. And if you listen to him post game too, it's hard to sound like Saban, but if you listen to him post game, he was tired, he was upset, he was not happy. And I always think of Vanderbilt over the last 2 or 3 years, like, hey man, you got to win, like, be happy, like, celebrate it, like, we're all pulling for you right now. Clark Lee's like, F that, man. Like, I like, we're going to be competing. And that's the way you have to handle it if you're going to build that program up to where James Franklin had it.
I really like that guy too. I like Clark Lee. I mean, honest to goodness, he's the coach at Notre Dame today if he stays there another year. I mean, Brian Kelly takes the LSU job, and instead of Marcus Freeman, it's Clark Lee. So this is a guy. I mean, Vandy, it's weird. Vandy's got a guy that would be the coach at Notre Dame right now if he'd just stayed there.
Yeah. And again, how about Notre Dame? Notre Dame looked pretty good over in Dublin. I mean, that was pretty solid. Sam Hartman with a 35-year-old like West Virginia lumberjack beard was actually pretty solid. I was interested to see him, but I like Clark Lee. Clark came on with us for SEC Network with Marty and McGee, and they had a good sit down. And it almost sounded to Bronny that he was pissed off of what the expectations of Vanderbilt football was, and like that's good, right? Like, it was. He's like, everybody's congratulating us that we won 5 games. Like, that's not the standard. And I was like, well, I was kind of happy you won 5 games. Like, I'm that dude.
I was going to congratulate you.
Okay, we're not going to do the congratulations thing. But yeah, you can't have that mentality. I thought they looked bigger off the bus. I thought they looked faster. I just don't think they have the depth, obviously, of good players. But hell, Vandy's had to deal with that for, forever, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. It'll be interesting to see how they respond and move on. That matchup they got with Wake coming up before they get into conference play. I'll tell you something else that's interesting too. For the teams that go there, obviously the Vanderbilt Stadium is way, way, way behind facility-wise. They're trying to catch up a little bit. If I saw correctly, they are using one of those big, like, event tents for the visiting locker room. And can you imagine Georgia goes there this year? Auburn goes there this year. these teams that are so accustomed to being in these world-class facilities.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're looking around and like, we're in a tent and folding chairs. And I mean, it could go one way or the other, but
Good. I hope
at
there's
some
not,
point,
like in Vanderbilt, you're like, there's no air conditioning, the running water doesn't work,
yeah,
like there's no
yeah,
place to piss before the game. Like it's just like make it as much of a home field
I
advantage.
know.
And I mean, again, that's part of the gamesmanship. We've done that. I can't remember what was the story about there was a team back in the day that used to paint the visiting locker room pink just
Uh,
as like
that
an
was
FU
Iowa.
to everybody. Was
Yeah,
it
that was
Iowa that would
Iowa.
do that?
Yep, I think
Yeah.
so.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
and
just to try to get in your head, just to try to get you uncomfortable when you're up there.
right. And I mean, in a wedding tent out before, but I'm not gonna listen. Low hanging fruit. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I don't know. Can we curse on this thing? Are we
Sure
allowed
you
to do
can,
it to a
Peter.
certain extent? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So you've
Thank
already
you.
done it. Now's the time to ask is not after you've done it. Right.
Yeah, I'm just new to
Right.
this whole television thing. Um, but I do think it's BS that a lot of fans and a lot of people are using the low hanging fruit of ripping Vanderbilt for their facilities. I'm like, I get it. Like they haven't had good facilities for the long time, but they're in the process of
Yeah.
addressing it right now. Like they're spending $300 million. Like I'm not going to fault them right now for trying to go through the process as quick as possible.
Yeah, I will rip their previous administration for allowing them to fall that far behind. I will say that, but I do
Yeah,
not. I mean, this administration, they're trying to catch up. And what are you supposed to do? I mean, you've been to that stadium. It's the worst stadium in the Southeastern Conference. They can't
yeah.
polish it. They had to demolish those end zones so that they could do something about it. So, I mean, what
Do
are
you
they
think it ever?
supposed to do?
Do you think it ever got to a point? Because Doring has brought this point up the last couple of years on our show before they announced all of the new dollars and cents into Vanderbilt in Nashville. He always like, hey man, it's unfair that Georgia's spending this money to make their teams better. Alabama's doing it, and it seemed at some point Vanderbilt was like, well, Tim Corbin is awesome, and Vanderbilt we got stacked, but we're not really going to donate, put a whole lot of money into the football program. And he's like, that's a should you get the same amount of share, right, as an Alabama or a
It's
Georgia or
true.
an
Yeah.
LSU? And I was like, well, yeah, you do, but in theory, I wonder at some point if Vanderbilt looks at this and was at some point they're like, hey man, conference realignment is really wacky, and like we don't want to necessarily. You're not going to kick anybody out of the team. Nobody's ever been kicked out of the conference of the SEC. They've left on their own volition, but like at that point they can say, listen, we just put $300 million into football. Like we are
We
invested
belong.
in this. We belong in
Yeah.
this program. Please continue to send the big new ESPN and college football playoff checks, right?
Yeah, how do you think we spent that $300 million? We're still getting that check from you guys.
Yeah.
He is Peter Burns of the SEC Network. You'll see him throughout the week, starting Thursday night. We'll get to that Florida-Utah game in just one moment. First, a reminder: this show is presented by MyBookie.ag. Code NEXTROUND when you sign up at MyBookie.ag for all the games. And one way you can make that a beneficial trip is start at Lance'sLock.com. Lance is coming off an 8-2 weekend in college football.
What?
Yes,
8-2?
8-2, yes. A hair away from 10-0. There was a quarterback injury. What game was it? I think it was the Ohio game. They had a quarterback injury. I mean, it was really, really close to an 8-0 weekend or 10-0 weekend. So 8-2, he's red hot. Lance'sLock.com, Lance'sLock.com for all your college football plays. Take those plays over to MyBookie.ag and use code NEXTROUND when you sign up to get that welcome bonus from the good people at MyBookie.ag. All right, one of those games, and they're a 6.5-point underdog. Florida on the road. It was a win last year. They were probably honestly fortunate to win that game. Utah had a couple of empty possessions down inside the red zone, and that's a tough way to win on the road against an SEC team. The biggest storyline in this game as we talk right now, Burnsy, Cam Rising, the Utah quarterback, is listed as their first-team quarterback, but nobody is saying whether or not he's going to start. And if he doesn't start, boy, you got to like Florida's chances even more in this game.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Cam Rising's a dude. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys have talked a little bit about him, but we talked to Bill Riley at ESPN 700 and who covers the Utes, and I asked him, I was like, all right, so what's the deal with this entire depth chart? And he's like, the ongoing joke, the running joke there in Utah is that like it's like Coach Whittingham's like daughter-in-law's like librarian from down the road that makes the depth chart. Like it's always been a joke. And so, like, we can't read too far into it, but we only go on our knowledge. And that as of this morning, when I talked to Bill, he said that Cam, courtesy of an NIL interview, okay, which I think is really cool,
Interesting.
he talked to him and said, listen, I'm not medically cleared to get on the field, right? So, I think there's a couple different things to chew on that. Like he can practice, but he's not medically cleared for contact yet. So there's no flipping way on Monday that if you're not cleared for contact, and Cam Rising is an NFL prospect and a pretty good quarterback, if you're going to say, all right, in 3 days from now, let's go throw you up against an SEC defense, right? Yeah. Like, and that would, as much as he would want to play, you'd almost be like, dude, like we're trying to protect you here. So I don't see him going to play. Their backup quarterback is dealing with a knee injury as well too. I think it's like literally we're going to run the rock and just try to make some plays happen on defense, which gotta be great news for the Florida Gators.
Yeah, and
Cam Rising's not playing. Like in my mind, Cam Rising is absolutely not going to play in week 1 against Florida.
I think I'd be a little bit surprised, especially, and I had not heard that until just now, what you told me, but especially knowing that if he's not medically cleared, like I know medically cleared doesn't mean like you've just miraculously healed overnight. There are steps you have to make, but yeah, I mean, as you and I talk, it is Monday. In game week terms, they've got only a Tuesday and a Wednesday. I mean, tomorrow is their last practice. Yeah. For a game week. I mean, if he hasn't gone through game week practice medically cleared, I mean, that does seem like a high bar right there for him to
It almost feels, like if this was week 7 or this was week 12, you're like, hey, listen, how much practice does he need to have? But I just don't think there's any way that you can say we're going to try to prepare one quarterback who's not medically cleared to even, get hit right now and throw him out there on a couple of days of practice against an SEC squad. I mean, listen, if they do, like Cam Rising should probably sue the university, and B, that'd probably be the greatest news for the Florida Gators, because I can't imagine that they would run him out of the pocket or at any point like have a whole hell of a lot of success. So I think it comes back to more of like Graham Mertz not turning the ball over and Florida running the ball. And I would have thought Utah. How did you feel about it? Because I thought Utah was going to Florida's coming up this week, maybe like 2 months ago. I don't feel that way in game week.
Yeah, the closer we get, the more I like Florida in this game. But but I got to say, Burnsy, Florida is a complete unknown to me. I mean, I don't know what to expect out of them. I don't know what Graham Mertz is going to look like in a Florida uniform playing. I don't know. I mean, they are a complete and total unknown. If you told me Graham Mertz goes out and throws for 350, I'd be surprised. But I'd be like, okay. If you told me Graham Mertz has 3 picks, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I got no idea, man. I really do not know.
So Doring, Chris Doring was down there, and he says, like, I got a chance to see practice up close and personal. And I was like, all right, so what'd you think? And he goes, I'm not punch drunk when I say this, right? Like because he'll rip Florida whenever it's time.
Oh yeah, he's done it on our show. Yeah.
This is as crisp and as efficient, and as I've seen this offense roll, like they were moving around, like this is as good of a practice as I've seen. Now they could get 63-10 by Utah, like who knows, right? But he was like, I have seen practices that I'm like, it ain't going to be good, and it turned out to be not good. He goes, it would shock me if they lay an egg right now with the way that this team has kind of been under Graham Mertz's, some tutelage. So I don't know, that bodes well. And my God, what a monster game that would be for Billy Napier, right? I mean,
huge. Well, I mean, because you got Tennessee coming to your place in week 4. Mm-hmm. So chances are you're 3-0 going into that game. Tennessee has won twice there since 1970. So, I mean, at that point, you feel like I got a chance to get off to the dream start. If I could beat Utah and Tennessee in my first month of football as Billy Napier, I mean, it almost erases everything that went wrong last year, and you flip the whole new page all of a sudden.
You got to So if you're Napier, you need to have 2 things. One, what helps you going into year 2 and continue any kind of momentum they have, because they have some good Florida recruiting momentum. One, to still a win in Utah when everybody thinks that you're not going to win that game, and then you bookend it with beating FSU. Like you do those 2 things in the middle, like it is what it is. But like if I give you 2 games on the year, as much as they'd like to beat Tennessee, as much as they'd like to beat Georgia, I don't see those things happening. If I'm a Florida Gator fan, or if I'm Billy Napier, would never say it, but I would say win Utah and win Florida State. That gives you some momentum at the start of the year, and then roll the dice. And at least you got to beat Florida State, and that could be a tough task because they're going to be good as hell this year.
Yeah, all these games, mybookie.ag, code next round for that sign-on bonus. And also visit lanceslock.com to get the plays to use right there at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag, code next round. You guys on the SEC Network will have South Dakota and Missouri. That is the Thursday night SEC Network game. That the South Dakota is the one Dakota you want to play. If you're going to play one of them, South Dakota is the one you do not want to play. North Dakota State or South Dakota State. Those are the two good ones.
Okay, so state schools you don't want. You'll
That's
take
right.
North Dakota. You'll take South Dakota.
Correct.
All right, let's check you on your mascot game. Don't look, okay? The South Dakota what?
All right, South Dakota State's the Jackrabbits.
That's correct. I knew the Jackrabbits. The Bison are North Dakota State. What Bison? Is South Dakota?
Are they the? I want to say it's like a coyote.
Hey, well done.
Did I get it?
Thank you. Or Brownie, did you actually know it was, and you were acting right now? You're like, and
nope,
like you're like you fully well knew that it was the coyote, so you're like,
yep, not that good an actor.
Nope. Coyote. Yeah.
I would love to say I have that type of acting skill. I do not. I could envision the logo, and it looks kind of like a coyote because, as I remember it, their logo looks similar to the Phoenix NHL logo.
Look at that. See, I still think that y'all with your 45 interns over at Next Round, like y'all have a whole team. It's like when Colin Cowherd has his whole team. They give him like all the stuff, and Jim Rome like all the information. They have like note cards up so they look like they know what they're talking about. Just make sure you don't have the Dwayne Haskins.
I was about to say, Colin's intern needs to learn how Google works. You might want to try that one. Early out of the chute, Virginia, Tennessee, ABC game. In Neyland, or not in Neyland Stadium, excuse me, in Nissan Stadium in Nashville. This is going to be a neutral site game. Tennessee's a huge favorite, like a 4-touchdown favorite in this game. But to me, seeing Joe Milton having it as his team, I mean, the times you've seen Milton, he's come in and mop-up duty last year. He played only after the injury to Hendon Hooker. So this has never really been his team. I'm interested, even in if it's a blowout, just to see how he manages his team as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia's trash, garbage, like not good, like potentially like one of the worst Power 5 schools coming up this season. I mean,
fair enough.
So it's like I looked at it and we were talking about it with some friends. I'm like, if you were Tennessee, this is almost the perfect opponent because in theory, you're like, we're playing a Power 5 school, right? We're playing an ACC school. Like this is not South Dakota where we're trying to figure out what the mascot is.
The mascot is, this is the Cavaliers. I've got this one.
It's a legit, it's Virginia, right?
Yeah, it's a program.
But they probably aren't very good. So it's one of those ones where you come away and you should look at this and go, wow, all right, 52-14. Okay, Milton scored a bunch of points. We might see a little Nico. We might see a little bit of, some different looks. The defense looked a whole lot better. Like it's a perfect opponent for Hypo to kind of build up more hype to build upon like what happened last year.
Ball State, Kentucky, also an SEC Network game in the early window. I think, this is so weird to say because Will Levis is at least competing in the NFL. He was a early second round, almost a first round draft pick. There were draft analysts that had him in the top 10, in the top 5.
Remember the rumor that Will Levis might be the number one pick? Like it was some like Reddit thing. I remember that happening at some point.
Yeah, it did not, by the way. He was not the number one pick. But I think they've upgraded at quarterback. And it's weird to say that, but I do. I think they've upgraded at quarterback in Devin Leary, the NC State transfer. Liam Cohen's back. Could this finally be the year that Mark Stoops has enough offense to match what is normally a really good defense to have a team that could cause some trouble in the East?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem of not having a 12-team playoff. Like Kentucky, I think, is a team that would be perfect in 2024. Like if you could take this team and like cryogenically freeze it and be like, all right, we're going to move it into 2024. Like Stoops is like, hell yeah, I'll do it. Because I think they have maybe arguably the best wide receiver room that they've had since probably Stoops got there, like top to bottom. They've had good wide receivers or wide receiver each year, singular, but they never had a room like this. I think the offensive line got a little bit better. Liam Cohen coming back out of the NFL helps their play calling. And I say I like Devin Leary. I don't know that much about Devin Leary. I'm lying to you just based on what people think Devin Leary is going to be. But I didn't know what Will Levis was going to be under Liam Cohen. And sure enough, he turned out to be great. And the offensive line can't be any worse than it was last year. So
that's right.
I still think they're the second best team, top to bottom in the East. But how much does that matter when Georgia's just a freaking machine right now? I don't know.
Mercer plays Ole Miss. It's going to be a blowout. I'm just interested in seeing what we see out of the quarterbacks. I mean, Jackson Dart, How much Spencer Sanders we see, that whole quarterback room that we've talked about all off season, just how much of that do we see? Because they got a tricky game at Tulane in week 2. So this is something.
Willie Fritz and those guys are good.
Yep.
Like Tulane and UTSA are 2 legit teams that have good quarterbacks. They got a lot of guys returning, and you're like, if there was this kind of spoiler Cincinnati type squad, Tulane would fit that bill, right? Like, because Tulane could sit there and go, hey, we went undefeated. We were really good. And, oh, by the way, we beat a pretty damn good SEC squad, right? Like that you have to have one of those marquee wins if you're not going to be one of the Power Fives to get invited to the, college football playoff.
Can I just stop right here for a second? Because you went to school at UTSA. For those that don't know, Peter's background was a golfer at UTSA.
Yeah.
Could you, if I had just gone back, 10 years.
I know what you're saying. No, absolutely. I would have no freaking clue that this actually would have happened because they're playing Tennessee this year. And I'm like,
I know.
Tennessee better not.
Week 4.
Tennessee fans are sitting there going, who is this? UTSA, UTSA, some of the Roadrunners, meet me, like whatever. I'm like, buddy, do not have that attitude when facing Jeff Traylor because that coach is a head coach in SOB.
Yeah, but how about the fact they are on the road against a Big 12 team week 1, and they're favored. They are currently a 1-point favorite at Houston. I mean, think about that as a UTSA guy. You're like, they're traveling to a Big 12 team, and they are favored. This is not a guarantee game where they just go to pick up a check and take a beating. They're actually favored on the road in the Big 12. That's pretty crazy to consider.
The 2 quick stories on that. It does not surprise me because back when I was playing NCAA football 2014 on PlayStation 2, I used to build UTSA every single year. And I would make them, I would kick Bama's ass every year. Like I would even beat LSU. Like, by the time you would play with your favorite team, like, and beat the game, you would be like, all right, I'm going to pretend to build a school, or I'm going to take like a small school and build them up. And that's what I would do at the UTSA. And by like year 6 of the dynasty, like I'm redshirting Heisman's, right? And like just kicking everybody's ass. So that's part of it. But I'm excited about it. And that's one of those teams that in a 12-team playoff, like that's pretty badass. I remember going on my recruiting tour up for college golf at UTSA, and like the big kind of chuckle was we would walk by the school bookstore and it would say UTSA football undefeated. And he's like, yeah, you get it. We never had a team. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, trust me, I wouldn't be here if I was a good enough golfer. Like I'd be somewhere else that actually had a football team.
Right. Hey, if this is one of those, if this were a 12-team playoff year, UTSA is a contender. And I'll give you another one, South Alabama, because they get Oklahoma State and who was their other non-conference? Oh, Tulane. They get Tulane in week 1. It's the classic look-ahead game for Tulane because Tulane has Ole Miss coming to New Orleans in week 2. So a good time for South to grab them. And then South also gets Oklahoma State. So I think both UTSA and South Alabama, like in a 12-team playoff year, this could be a good year for them. These are the types of teams you have to look at.
And that goes back to the conversation we had about Kentucky. Like, Kentucky is a situation where do I think they can play themselves? Like you have to have, unfortunately, a brand or this unbelievably good path, an exciting path to get to a 4-team playoff right now. If you don't, you're outside of the club, right? Like you're outside of the velvet ropes. With 12, it's going to be more of an opportunity. Like I think there's a lot of teams. I think Auburn's one of those teams. I think Florida is a team like this. Even Kentucky is a team like this, to where as important as it is to be good in 2023, it's about setting the table for 2024 when you can realistically be a college football playoff team. That's why, like, if I'm Hugh Freeze, I'm playing a boatload of young guys right now. And the same thing for, Kentucky, and the same thing for anybody, even Mississippi State. It's like, how do I put myself in a situation where, I want to win as many games as possible now, but setting myself up for success when it could equal a college football playoff berth. That's not going to happen right now in 23, but it could happen in 24.
Yeah, and speaking of Auburn, you bring them up. They take on UMass, a 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern kick there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. That game is on ESPN. UMass coming off a win, which doesn't happen very often, but it's going to now. You catch UMass off a win if you're Auburn. They've got the transfer whose name I cannot even begin to say from Clemson. and he
I
was the
saw
key
it.
to winning. You got it? You want to take a
No
crack at
clue.
it? Do you even
No,
know? Okay, no
no,
clue. All right.
not.
Yeah.
I mean, there were way too many like a vowel, and there were
I,
too
th- I
many
think it's why
consonants.
I
I
think
had
it's
no
why
idea.
Dabo let him transfer. Dabo was like, I don't even know how to say his
I
name.
just got
I got to let
by
him
with
transfer.
DJ Uiagalelei. Like
Yeah,
I'm
I
tapped
ain't
out.
doing it
I can't
again.
do it anymore.
Yeah, I'm from Pelham, Alabama. I didn't know I was going to have to say all these names. So he's transferred to UMass. He was really good. Now listen, it was New Mexico State, the Aggies, by the way. He was really good in that game, but or was it New Mexico? Were they playing the Lobos? Either
I was
way,
gonna say, yeah,
yeah.
no. They were. It was New Mexico State, and
Okay,
that's the
okay,
Aggies. New Mexico
yes,
was the Lobos, right?
that's
It's
right.
great.
Okay, I
My
got
wife
you.
is a Lobo. It's great to be a Lobo. They play A and M.
But he's a guy that can make some plays. They're not going to beat Auburn, but I'm with you. I want to see what this offense looks like. Hugh Freeze has been such a good offensive coach. I want to see what Peyton Thorne looks like. Auburn's got a lot of unknowns, a lot of holes that they have to fill. This roster was a mess when Hugh Freeze took it over. I'm with you. I like Hugh Freeze having a little year 2 magic, but you
Yeah.
build that in year 1.
How many? I mean, that was what Lane Kiffin was, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the parallel of Lane Kiffin and Hugh Freeze on the football field and their coaching prowess are very similar in my mind, right? Like for the first year for Lane at Ole Miss, it was about how do you get people excited about Ole Miss football? How do you score a boatload of points? I don't give a damn how many points we give up on defense, right? Like get people pumped up. I mean, people remember like they thought Lane's first year was pretty good. It was 5-5 in
Yep.
2020, a boatload of points, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed. But I think it led to the excitement, which led to the 10-game season or 10-win season the year after when DJ Durkin helped the defense. I'm like, take that blueprint if you're Hugh Freeze, right? Hey, score a boatload of points, right? As many as you can, and sit there and go, this is what the future is going to look like, and hope that you can parlay it into year 2 success like Lane did over in Oxford.
All right, a couple of guarantee games in
Real quick,
the
hold on, real quick.
yeah.
You a run up the score guy?
So it depends. Here's the thing. Like if I'm in an SEC game, I mean, you're an SEC team. It's on you to be better. Now, if I'm playing, UT Martin, we'll get to Georgia and UT Martin in a little bit. I mean, there's an obvious imbalance there. Like if Kirby says, I want to score 80, Kirby could score 80. But there's an obvious imbalance. And why are you even doing it, right? But back in the day when Spurrier, used to go to Vandy, for instance, and I mean, Vandy's an SEC school. Either you're an SEC school or you're not. I can't make excuses for you. And I don't coach your defense. I coach my team. And when I've got my backup in there, I want him to run my offense. Now, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I do not. Absolutely not.
And I don't think Kirby is in a situation where Kirby would sit there. I mean, he's coming off back-to-back natties, right? Like Kirby's not going to be like, I need to score a little bit more. Although LSU fans are still pissed he went for 2 late into the SEC championship game. Like I talked to my dad, and like my dad, I'm like, yeah, Kirby is a great guy, and my dad always asks about him. He's like, oh, he's dead to me. I was like, what do you mean he's dead to me? He's like, when they went for 2 late in the SEC championship game, I'll never be a Kirby Smart fan. I was like, it just means more, right?
It
like
does.
on that
is
aspect.
it. Yep.
But I think Kirby at that point was trying to prove a little message. But like
Yeah.
again, I don't think Kirby has to prove that to smaller teams. I think now Hugh needs to prove that, right, against a smaller team. I think Hugh needs to get to a point where he's like, I need them to be talking about us on SportsCenter, on the Burnout, on Next Round, on Sirius XM, on College Football Live. Like, holy shit, did you see Hugh's team? Like the Auburn Tigers ended up scoring, 72. That'll perk up people right now, and he needs to do that just for recruiting and branding.
All right, so a string of those games that we'll talk about in 1 second. A reminder, the show brought to you by mybookie.ag. Code NEXTROUND when you sign up for that sign-on bonus, that welcome bonus at mybookie.ag. I was talking about that parlay deal a little earlier. Say you play a 3-leg parlay, you get the first 2 legs in the house, and you're like, man, I don't know how I feel about this third one now. They got a cash out option. You can use that money to play another game. You can let it ride, whatever you want to do right there. See more at mybookie.ag with all the games starting this Thursday night. Mybookie.ag, code NEXTROUND when you sign up to get that welcome bonus. Code NEXTROUND at mybookie.ag. Great place to go before that, though, is lanceslock.com. Our very own Lance Taylor, 8-2 over the weekend in football. So he's killing it right now, and it will only get better. Imagine when he gets to see some of these teams play, and he's not just going on, not seeing them play. 8-2 over the weekend. He'll continue to kill it. Lanceslock.com. Take those plays over to mybookie.ag and use code NEXTROUND. All right, Southeast Louisiana, Mississippi State, Western Illinois, Arkansas, UT Martin, Georgia, the yawner portion of the SEC schedule, but there's still some nuggets in here. We'll start with Mississippi State because Zach Arnett is changing that offense. Will Rogers could end this season as the SEC's all-time leading passer. I just don't know what it's going to look like right now.
Yeah, I think that to me, I'm actually kind of more intrigued with Mississippi State's opener than I am Ole Miss's opener. Right. Like, because I kind of understand, like, at least what the offense looks like. Kevin Barbay taking over, the former App State offensive coordinator, and what Will Rogers looks like not in Mike Leach's offense. Like, I don't know what to expect. Like, it's kind of like Sam Hartman. He ran that real weird slow
that slow mesh.
Yeah. And I'm like, what is he going to look like? And he runs a traditional offense. We saw that
pretty good,
pretty damn good. 4 touchdowns, very efficient for Notre Dame against Navy. So I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like right now. Cause it's death taxes and, Mississippi State being picked 7th in the West every year at media days. And so I think they're a better squad than that in theory. And, I just kind of want to see Will Rogers, and I want to see if Zach Arnett feels comfortable. I know he's coached games before, but this is your deal now. That's what I'll be looking forward to in that game.
The Arkansas situation, you could make an argument they got the best quarterback running back combo in the conference with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders.
I don't think that's an argument. I think that's
it's probably the case. Yeah.
Might not be. If it's not one in the country, I'm trying to think.
That's true. In the whole country.
What is?
Yeah.
Right? I'm just thinking if Ole Miss with Quinshawn, I think you have to add in there. What was a kid, Caleb Williams and Zachariah Branch, that freshman that looked great for USC.
Gosh, how good did he look the other day?
He looked great. That could be a good 1-2 punch, but it's top 3 off the top of my head. KJ is legit. Rocket is legit. And again, nobody talks about Arkansas right now. I'm like, that's a team you don't want to meet if you've got a good quarterback and a game changer. Like, dude, go put them in the ACC right now. I'm not sure if Arkansas doesn't give everybody a run for their money, but can they do it in the SEC West? It's tough.
Well, and you mentioned UT Martin in Georgia. Just seeing Carson Beck, and he's played in 11 games already, so I think we got a feel for what Carson Beck is going to be. But in Mike Bobo's offense, Bobo taking over with Todd Monken, who went to the Baltimore Ravens. In Bobo's offense, it's the same thing I said about Tennessee. When you see a quarterback take over for the really, really good starter and it becomes his team, they can be different guys. And I will be interested to see what Carson Beck looks like. How does he manage this team against a far inferior opponent whose uniforms will look like Auburn, but they will not play them as close as Auburn?
Yeah, to me, it's almost like I want to see what the running back game, looks like rushing attack right now for Georgia, because they got now Kendall Milton after they lost Robinson for the whole year. Like, they are not deep in that position whatsoever. Like, they may play walk-ons at running back. Now, mind you, Georgia walk-ons at running back,
pretty good.
Probably be 3 or 4-star guys that are just like, hey, just give me a shot, I'll be damn good. But I think the running back situation and how Bobo, because Bobo has been pretty adamant about it. He wants to score a boatload of points, and I think he wants to also announce his presence as well too. So what that looks like with Bobo and Beck and how aggressive they are, that's what I'll be tuned in up for that one.
Boy, New Mexico, Texas A&M, in any other year would not interest me one bit.
However,
but now we've added in Bob Petrino, and boy, am I fascinated to see how this game plays out. An ESPN game, so it's an ESPN night game in College Station, and I will be all in to see how this looks.
Yeah, I think there's I think if you poll people, and I'm always up for a good poll question. That I feel like if you polled people, at least 6 to 8% think there will be a brawl between Petrino and Fisher in the game. Maybe it's almost how are these two going to get together? I think it works, frankly. And I want to see how the quarterback situation is going to play out. Everybody had said that it's going to be Connor Wegman, but remember, Max Johnson was pretty damn good last year, and before his hand got hurt. So I think that could be a little bit of a quarterback battle that we'll see coming up. I think they're going to surprise people. I think they're good. I think they end up being the 3rd best team in the SEC West, which is probably still a team that could win a couple of other conferences had they played in them.
Just after that starts, Middle Tennessee is in Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. The Crimson Tide, your colleagues there at ESPN on Game, they really liked Alabama, picked them across the board there, which I'm sure Kirby Smart loved watching. I'm not sure if Nick Saban loved watching it or not. Again, this is one of the rare times under Nick Saban where you look at quarterback and you're like, I don't know. But I will say, find me a time where they've really screwed it up at quarterback, and you can't. So I'm going to go track record here and say I think it's going to be Milroe. But even with Tyler Buckner in there or Ty Simpson in there, I think they're still going to have a successful offense because they're going to run the ball better this year.
It's Blake Sims, it's Coker, it's other quarterbacks that they've had in the past that you're like, they're going to get it figured out. Like, I will say this. After media days and talking to J.C. Latham and the way Alabama players presented themselves, I had never heard the Tide like that at media days. Like, normally they're like, we don't even want to interview them because they're like, well, we're going to give 100% or we trust the process. Like, it's just boring. The fact that they were so like kind of in your face about we're disrespected, we're going to be good. Like, they got the A-OK to say that because they believe it, right? And I think they're going to announce their presence. And I will tell you, as an LSU fan, that scares the living crap out of me. Like, because I still have this PTSD about like when Alabama wants to run the ball on you and you can't stop it. There's no more of a like just sucking the emotion and life out of your body when you're in the stands, being like, all right, here comes the 7-minute just make you quit, tap out drive right before a half, and then they'll get the ball right in the start of the next half. And you're like,
possessions,
well, I mean,
that was fun.
Might as well go do laundry. That sucked. And I would say I think this is going to be the most exciting Alabama football season in a decade, right? Because you don't know what the hell to expect. Like over the last couple of years, you knew what to expect, and albeit they might lose a game here or there, like I don't know what this offense looks like. I don't know what the defense looks like. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. So, like, this is what normal college football fans feel like, Alabama. This is how an LSU fan feel for the last 2 decades. Like, shit, I don't know. Like, are we gonna be good? We're gonna be bad?
I don't know.
I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna drink.
Let's go. Let's go to the game and see. Yeah.
As opposed to Alabama fans are like, we'll watch kickoff. Yeah, I'll be over the house by second quarter. Like, where it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. All right, 2 big games coming up. The best 2 SEC games of the weekend coming up. We'll talk about those in 1 second. A reminder, if you're just watching us, it's at Disrupt the Media on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to all our channels. We've got content coming out from the next round and from Disrupt the Media. So subscribe and set alerts so you know when things drop. And please give us a thumbs up. That helps us a ton. He is Peter Burns of the SEC Network. I'm Ryan Brown. You can see on the screen there where you can follow us on social media. At Peter Burns ESPN, at Ryan Brown Live, and all the other information there. All right, let's talk about these 2 big games. First, the battle for the Carolinas there in Charlotte, South Carolina, North Carolina. Nobody outside of maybe Georgia finished the season better than South Carolina last year. To get those 2 wins at the end of the year, the way Shane Beamer did it changed, I think, everybody's outlook for this current South Carolina team.
And I think they're going to need that from Spencer Rattler this season, right? Well, Dow Loggins coming in, I think it's a simplified offense that's going to allow him to do a little bit more, because I think that's what happened. And I love Marcus Satterfield, but I think it was just a complex offense that he just wasn't vibing, with early in the season. They finally just said, hey, let's just make it easy. Go out there and play ball. Then they beat the hell out of Tennessee, beat the hell out of Clemson, and look better down the road. So I look at this and I go, they're going to need it simply for the fact of, I think defensively, they just lose too many pieces right now. Like, and I can't wait to see what Drake May looks like just as a college football fan, because by people I've talked to on the NFL level, they like Drake May as good and sometimes even better as far as like the makeup more even than Caleb Williams.
Wow.
So like, you're going to have to put up some monster numbers if you're going to, you're going to compete in that game.
Well, I tell you what, you get the Spencer Rattler that played against Tennessee that night. At Williams-Brice. And a lot of people look back at the Hendon Hooker injury, which was extremely unfortunate for Hooker, a great player. That game was over when that injury happened. I mean, they lined up and beat the same Tennessee team that had beaten Alabama and had beaten Florida and had beaten everybody but Georgia. They lined up and smashed them. And a lot of that was Spencer Rattler. And when you get good Spencer Rattler, we saw it at Oklahoma, we've seen it at South Carolina, Burnsy, good Spencer Rattler could be as good as any quarterback in the nation.
Yeah, and he came in with a really good kind of vibe in media days. And again, I think sometimes, like I remember interviewing Jeremy Johnson.
Yeah.
Remember the Auburn quarterback, and remember he's going to come in. He played that first half of football. We're like, bro, this guy could win it, like the whole thing. Like this guy's awesome. And then you met with them, and you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I get that leadership vibe that everybody's going to roll with. I get that out of Spencer Rattler. Like he is. I'll go to war with him right now. Like that's my dude, and I'm not a Gamecock fan.
All right, the Sunday nighter. I am so excited about LSU taking on Florida State. The Tigers a slight favorite. Don't forget mybookie.ag. You could play that game. They've got that parlay deal where if you win the first 2 legs of parlay and you're like, boy, I don't know, man. I don't know if I like this third play. You can cash out. You can continue to play that. Use code NEXTROUND at sign on at mybookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Mybookie.ag. That's next round sign on code. And you get a welcome bonus at mybookie.ag. Our man Lance Taylor is on fire with his picks. Lanceslock.com to get those Lances. Lock.com, great packages for all the football season. 8-2 in football the last weekend, so he's feeling it right now. Get on early. Lanceslock.com to get all of your plays there. LSU a slight favorite in Orlando over Florida State. I remember this game last year, Bernsey, watching it thinking, boy, that was an entertaining game, but I don't think either one of these teams are worth a crap. And it turned out I was way off on that. Both teams had a surprisingly good year. Now there are expectations for both these teams, which is fascinating to see how they handle that.
Yeah, and again, I look at this and I'm like, LSU could not have played any worse in that game. Like it was one of the worst, sloppiest games. It was Jaden Daniel trying to find his offense. I mean, I'm like, oh dear Lord. And I knew LSU fans were going to rip Brian Kelly to shreds. But then they come back, and then you're like, oh my gosh, if they don't miss the extra point, you're sitting there going, they got all the momentum. They might win that game. And we'll see what happens. But like to me, it's almost impossible to ask me this question because I'm way too close with it because I'm a diehard LSU fan.
That's what I want, though. I want to hear that. Right. I want to hear the diehard LSU fan come out.
Well, a couple years ago, everybody wanted Miami to be good, right? Yeah. Like that. It was 2018, and hey, man, Miami's back and U's back and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't give a you-know-what. Like LSU is about to absolutely wax and destroy Miami. Well, guess what? They did, right? I'm not as confident. I'm still confident in a victory, but I'm not as confident that it ends up being some, 3-touchdown win. And we're looking at this going, oh my God, LSU is incredible. I think they do win because I think the defense, frankly, even though they're not going to have Mason Smith, I still think that the defensive line is as good as anybody. And I think they're going to try to run the ball. They're not going to be able to do it. Harold Perkins and company are going to get back there. I just don't think LSU is going to click on offense week 1. And so I don't know about the Lance's lock, but you might want to put like the LSU Florida State like under on that one because I think it ends up being a little bit more of a defensive battle.
Okay. All right. So Bernsey likes a little lower scoring game for Mike Norvell and Brian Kelly there.
And plus, should we go all lowers or all unders on like my bookie right now? Because like with the new clock rules, there's going to be 5 less plays a game, but I don't think it played. But I think over the course of the season, it'll get closer to 8 or 10.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty sizable play. I feel like there's some value in playing unders, but I don't know if that played out yet in week 0 yet.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember if the unders played or not. It's 5 plays in 3 minutes. I mean, that's 3 minutes of actual of past time. So, I don't know if all that was worth it. I'm with you. Let's let it play out a little bit and see if those numbers do change. Mm-hmm. But just through week 0 in 7 games, and keep in mind now, one of those was Navy running the triple option in a game where they were losing by $1 billion, just trying to burn everybody trying to burn clock there. So I don't know. We'll see. But it's a great point that I think everybody's talking about right now that is interested in any of this is how does this affect the totals? Because there should be fewer points scored if there are 5, 8, 10 fewer plays.
Can we do this next week?
Absolutely. Bama, Texas next week.
Yeah,
we'll look back at all these
like you and I talking. Okay, good.
Of course. MyBookie.ag, code next round. When you sign up and get that sign-up bonus at MyBookie.ag, start the day, though, at LancesLock.com, LancesLocks.com, and get all of Lance's pick at LancesLock.com. I think I said that with an S. Just use LancesLock.com. Get all the picks, take them to MyBookie.ag, and start the season off right. Bernsey supporting our boys at Roback, TNR20 at checkout, and you save 20%. So we're helping you save money and make money at mybookie.ag, code next round. He is Peter Burns. I'm Ryan Brown. Enjoy week 1, Bernsey. We'll see you next week.
See y'all.